Hello, my name is Kenneth Simon, and I live in Mamaroneck. In World War II, I became a prisoner of war. I was flying in a B-17 bomber. I was a bombardier on what was my 46th mission. We were flying a mission over Udine, Italy. With the bomb group, we were, as I said, a B-17 bomb group. And just after I dropped the bombs, there was a big bang in the back of the airplane. Turned out that our airplane had been hit, that we were under a severe fighter attack, firing mostly rockets at us. I think, and I'm almost positive, that the explosion was actually caused by one of our own planes flying above us. We were dropping fragmentation bombs. It blew off the tail of the aircraft. The tail gunner was killed. The plane went through a steep dive, then straightened out. All the rest of us got out of the airplane, and I was then landed in Italy. Udine was approximately 20 miles from Venice, and were picked up first by Italian police, and then turned over to the German authorities. And in due course wound up as a prisoner of war, where I was in a prisoner of war camp called Stalag Luft 1, which was on the Baltic, north, and so I got my direction straight east, a little bit, I guess, of Berlin. And I remained there until, that was in, the day I went down was March 18th of 1944. I remained there until 1945. On May Day, which would be May 1 of 1945, we were liberated by the Russians. And in due course, I returned to the United States and was discharged in time from the Army. Many years after that, I became aware of an organization called the Ex-Prisoners of War, and I joined the organization. And in the course of that, I came across the name, and because I read in the publication that was put out of a person that had actually been in another prisoner of war camp, who had taken photographs while he was a prisoner of war, and that person's name was Angelo Spinelli. Actually, after I read that piece, I looked through my own records and found that I had some pictures of Angelo Spinelli's work, because there had been a book put out by the YMCA, which provided us in the prison camps with all of our recreational material, and did a wonderful job under very difficult circumstances. And in that book was a book that he had done of his photographs, along with drawings and sketches that were done by a guy named Ross Greening, who had actually been in the same prisoner of war camp that I was in. And I knew Ross from that prisoner of war camp. So then, in reading one of the issues of the publication, I came across the fact that Angelo's pictures, after were being exhibited at the Andersonville Historic Site, which is in Andersonville, Georgia, which is maintained by the Parks Department through the Department of the Interior. And then a little later than that, I found out that they had made a traveling exhibition of that work. So it struck me that that might be an interesting thing to bring to Mamaroneck. So I got in touch with Angelo, I got in touch with the Park Service, and lo and behold, it opens here on Sunday, March 22. It'll be here, April 22. It'll be here through at least the end of May and possibly longer. It's a terrific exhibit, and sitting to my right is Mr. Angelo Spinelli.
I was drafted in 1941, and I went into the Signal Corps. It was a problem trying to get into the photographic branch, but I worked quite a bit in order to get myself into the photographic branch of the Signal Corps. I went to the school that they have for photographers, and then we were assigned, after finishing the courses, I was assigned to the 162nd Signal Photo Company, which was its headquarters in Little Rock, Arkansas. We stayed there for a period of several months, going from one city to another for doing public relation work, till it finally was time to go overseas. On we were shipped to New York, and we were on the Queen Mary going to England. We stayed in England and then to Scotland. Finally, we boarded the ship, a New Zealand ship, Awatea, and we made the initial invasion in Africa on November 8th, 1942. We were there till the day I was captured, doing photographic work for the U.S. government. And on March 14th, that was the day I was captured. And it's a long story the way I got captured. I was taking pictures in the morning, and as time went on, I was finished all my photographic work, and I didn't have no more pictures or film to take pictures. But what happened, the American Army got a hold of a German patrol, and the company I was with decided, since I had nothing to do, I would be glad to take these 10 or 11 Germans back to Command A for interrogation. So I volunteered to take them. So the lieutenant gave me a driver plus 2 guards to take these German prisoners to the American lines for interrogation. In a period of time from the morning on till the afternoon, Combat Command Air was moving from one place to another, and we lost our direction. Before we know, we were caught in the field of battle. And what we did, we got off our vehicles and lie down behind a mound with these German prisoners, and we're watching as the battle was going on. As it approached in the latter part of the afternoon, the German army with their tanks were advancing and got to the point where they disbanded most of our vehicles, and there was a complete line of German tanks that came to us. And no sooner did the German tanks come to us, the German sergeant in charge, he was very tickled pink that now what happened, we became their prisoners. It was Rommel's troops that was there. But during the time that, in my estimation, very important, I was very kind to the German prisoners. Being a souvenir, I bartered with them for things of souvenirs, which I treated them well, gave them cigarettes and all. And I was able to converse with the German sergeant there. He says, "Don't worry, if it's the Germans, you'll be well taken care of." And I told him, if it's the Americans, you have nothing to worry, you'll be well taken care of. So when there were nothing else but German tanks around us, and we had no alternative but they disarmed us, and we became their prisoners. What they did for us was marvelous. Myself with my driver, Michael Alfonsi, with the 2 guards, rather than walk back to Algiers from the Kasserine Pass, we rode all the way with the Americans back to what they called Sebastianville. There was a German interrogation camp, and they kept us there. They had bunks ready for us, a room where they put us. They fed us in the morning, fed us at lunch, fed us in the evening, and we had the fear that the morning would be the day of execution. Fortunate for us, we were not executed, and as the days went by, after 3-4 days, they finally put us gave us transportation back to the schoolhouse where all the Americans that were captured were brought there. What they did do then, they put us on an airplane near Algiers. They flew us to Sicily. From Sicily, we went to Italy. They refueled in Sicily. We went to Italy, and right outside of Naples, was where they were gathering all these American prisoners. We stayed there a few days, and after a few days, they put us in boxcars and drove us to Italy, to Switzerland, and we finally landed on Stalag 7A, that was near Munich. We stayed there for about a month till they opened up a new camp strictly for sort of the Americans. This was Furstenberg on the Oder, and in Furstenberg on the Oder, we stayed there for a period over 2 years. But let me go back to what was going on in Stalag 3B. For the first 6 months at Stalag 3B, we were on a regular German ration, which was a slow starvation diet, waiting for the parcels, American parcels, to come in. No sooner the American parcels came in 6 months later, in the month of August, we were captured on February 14th, 1943. When these American parcels came in, it was a godsend. That made us sustain us of surviving. And in the American parcels, there were cigarettes plus food. I was a non-smoker, and being a non-smoker, I used my cigarettes for bartering. And I befriended a German guard. A German guard who was kind enough, I'm looking for a camera. And it was difficult to befriend this German guard. He spoke that his family was all killed in Berlin, and he was a man in his 60s. And he was kind enough to secure a camera for me, which was a Voigtlander Besser that took 120 roll film. With now having a camera, what I would like is, how could I get film? I paid 8 packs of cigarettes for this camera, and now I need film. I was able to get from the guard a roll of 120 film for 1 pack of cigarettes. After not knowing the various type of film that the Germans had, I didn't know the various speeds of the film. I made sure when this was strictly forbidden, and I made sure that whenever I took pictures, that no German ever saw me with the camera taking pictures. Well, the nicest part of this camera, it has a viewfinder that I can use at waist level, and I just look down and I could take the picture at waist level, and that's how I used it to take the pictures. Now, once I got the film, now I want to see how well I can do with the pictures, if my exposure was correctly or overexposed, underexposed, and I could make the necessary correction in exposing the next shots. So in a period of 20 months, I managed to take pictures of life behind barbed wire, of the various activities, what the Americans were doing, whether we were playing ball, whether we were getting on the line to get food, water, whatever, every activity that transpired. I managed to take pictures whenever I had the film, and of what was being transpired. What I did want, now that I got the film, I exposed the film, I want to see whether I overexposed, underexposed. I managed to get the guard to get the film processed for me. He took it to town, gave it to someone to process it. A day or two later, he would bring me the film with the pictures. So then I was able to see whether the pictures had proper exposure or not, and I compensated on the following shots what kind of pictures I was. And in a period of 20 months, I compiled a fantastic collection of activities that transpired at the camp. As well, we had shows. In the interim also, I was able to barter for a tripod, an 8-inch tripod that extended to 5 feet. And as far as taking indoor pictures, I exposed them as time shots in a period of 8 to 10 seconds, and asked the American POWs to hold their position for the period of 8 to 10 seconds because I was shooting on the smallest open with whatever lighting we had in that theater. And the pictures came out unbelievable. A real professional photographer taking with all kinds of equipment couldn't produce a better picture. So in a period of 20 months, there it was, I took all these various pictures and was able also to see that I could hide all my camera equipment with the film and the negatives, so that the various shakedowns we had, I made sure that I will not have those camera equipment or film in my possession. I managed to find and build a hiding place within the barrack, that any time there was any sort of a rumor that the Germans are coming for a shakedown, I got all my forbidden equipment and buried in the ground, and until the shakedown was over, then I took them out of the ground because they would create mildew with the equipment as well as the foam. So I kept them away from the ground, and any time, regardless whether it's shakedown or not, I made sure they were unable to be caught with it. Now, in a period of time, in these 20 months that we were at Stalag 3B, which was Furstenberg on the Oder, I managed to amass a tremendous collection of pictures and made sure I maintained and kept the negatives with me at all times. Now it came to the day we have to evacuate because the Russians were coming. So now what happens now? What am I going to do? So I hid. I was caught with my barrack musette bag, where I was able to keep all my photo equipment, and on top of that, used to put the Red Cross processed food to hide what was in it. So we had it came the day that the Russians were coming, we have to evacuate and go on to Stalag 3A, which was in Luckenwalde, and this was called that night that we all have to get on and move on to Stalag 3A. Now, what the heck? What am I going to do with all I have? I made sure I buried everything in my bag and covered it up. And for that night, we took on. It was a cold, wintry night, and we went on this march. In the middle of the night, I was unable to walk any further. So lo and behold, I fell on the ground. I says, I don't care. If they shoot me, let them do what they want, but I can't walk anymore. And luckily for me, plus several other Americans, they called the crank wagon came along, and one of the boys, which I just met in the last year and a half, he was the one who picked me up and threw me on the wagon with all my equipment. And we rode on the wagon for about 8 days. And as we drove every day and came to nighttime, they would put us in a police building there, and kept us there to sleep at night, get up in the morning, get back in the wagon, and kept driving till it was about 8 to 10 days that we did this driving on a wagon, which was about 80 kilometers from 3B to Stalag 3A, which was in Luckenwalde. Now the question is, now we got to Stalag 3A, and our wagon with all the sick that were called sick had to be inspected. Now the problem comes, what happens now with all my film, camera, and equipment? So I noticed before me how the guards was inspecting all the equipment that they had. There was a 2x8 table. On one side of the table was one German. On the other side of the table was the other German guard, and they asked us to put everything on the table for inspection. Now, how could I put my camera equipment on the table? So I had I just took out the clothing and food and put that on the table and held my musette bag by the strap at the edge of the table, hanging below the table, and I walked up to the guard. As soon as I saw the guard, I got a pack of cigarettes out of my pocket, put it in the palm of his hand, and he told me, come on, move on, move on. By the time I got at the end of the table, I put my coat and food article over the bag and all, and walked out. And then they brought us to the barrack that we were going to stay. Fortunately, from that period of time, which was in late January, we had no shakedowns at that particular camp of Stalag 3A. If I had any kind of a shakedown then, I would not know what to do with all this camera and pictures and negatives that I had. Fortunately, that didn't happen. It was on April 22nd or 23rd that the Russians were coming. They came through our camp, and the night before, all the Germans disappeared. Now, when the Germans all disappeared, I felt kind of somehow secure that my equipment was never confiscated, taken away in any way. So what happened now? How am I going to get back to the American lines? Fortunately, the American ambulances came to relieve the sick that were in the, I forgot the name of the, what they call a hospital in Germany. And what happened, while I was at the Stalag 3A, I was dealing with the French, because they like American cigarettes. And I requested, if they went and stole a German truck, an open truck, several Frenchmen's, and they decided how to get back to the American lines is when the convoy of these American ambulances came, we tailgated the convoy American ambulances because they knew their way to get back to the American lines. So we drove that particular day up to the American lines. No sooner we got to the American lines, I jumped off and contacted the American MPs and asked the American MPs what would they, if there is a signal photo company nearby. Lo and behold, there was one. We got off, we went to the signal photo company that was there, told them who we were. There's this Roland Chatham, who was also a photographer with me. And he got caught at the Bulge. I met him in that Stalag 3B. So we drove with the French in a truck following the convoy, and the American in charge of this photo company that was in the American lines, he tried to get us back to the States, which was impossible. So what they finally did, got us to back to France, and then we went to the staging area in Le Havre, France, and we waited there and were taken care of by the American troops for several weeks, feeding us, have food morning till night to feed us and get us ready to be shipped to America. In a period of time, I still had film and camera. I took pictures of all these procedures and whatnot and accumulated, as well as when we got on ship to come back to the States, I also had a camera there, and I took these pictures and all. And I got back to the States and called my home and all, and that's how I had my musette intact bag with all the camera equipment, pictures and all, and negatives. Now what happened then? When I got home, we received a letter inviting all American POWs of the New York City area to a dinner by the YMCA. I went to that dinner and seen John Burkhart, which was the public relation man of the YMCA, which he took charge of the Yankee Kriege book that was made. And during the dinner that we had there, I went up to him and I told him, I got a collection of pictures. He says, what pictures can you have? I says, John, you'll be surprised the pictures I got. So he couldn't understand it. So we made the luncheon appointment, one after another. When I seen the pictures, what I had, he couldn't believe it. That's how they produced the Yankee Kriege book, and they published 50,000 copies. And at that time, Colonel Greening, he was fortunate enough, so I hear later on, that he got quite a bit out of artifacts that they were building in the German. The German Americans were building in Germany while as prisoners. He got that. Fortunately, how he got that much of this artifacts back into to England, from England to the States, and that's why YMC had a tour of the POWs with all these artifacts, and they distributed these 50,000 books.
Let's go back a minute and bring you up so that you can go. Now, what did you do in life before you became a member of the Signal Corps and came into the United States Army? What kind of work did you do?
I kind of work. I was at that time. I was doing jewelry business, working in a jewelry store. But how I got interested in photography, when in high school. I was taking pictures in a high school and developing all for high school newspaper. But that didn't qualify me so much to get into the photo school. After I spoke myself deaf, dumb, and blind to the lieutenant in charge of the photo school that I desperately want to get into the photo school, and he finally agreed and made me get into the photo school.
And this was when you were inducted into the armed forces first, right?
When I got I got inducted, then I went.
Okay, and then you went to the photographic school?
Right.
And where was that?
In Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, the photographic school was in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. From there, we were assigned to the 162nd Signal Photo Company in Little Rock, Arkansas.
All right. Now, did they give you then instruction on what sort of combat photography you should do?
No. That was the idea: go out and take pictures, take everything and anything that would be useful to the government.
Mm-hmm.
We had no authority and unlimited amount of picture taking. At that time, we had a 35 millimeter camera. We had an 8 millimeter cassette load movie camera, doing that type of work, and while in Africa prior to capture.
Mm-hmm. And then when you went with the Signal Corps outfit, that you went in and you probably landed where, around Casablanca?
No, we landed in Algiers.
In Algiers.
We landed in Algiers. It was fortunate we were the first wave going into Algiers. Fortunately, there was no resistance. We landed in Algiers, and there no evidence of any Germans.
Mm-hmm.
The combat was rough. Was the boys that landed in Iran, and we stayed in Algiers. We got our photo unit together, and from November 8th till February 14th, that's all I was doing, taking pictures in Africa of anything and anything that would be of useful to the government. Or the lieutenant would assign me to one unit, and from one unit to another, and stay there. And if there's any activity, to take pictures and get them back to the lieutenant. They fly it back to London, and they did whatever they want with it.
Mm-hmm. What was your rank then?
When I got into Africa, I was ranked as a sergeant.
Mm-hmm. All right. And the Battle of Kasserine Pass was the first large tank battle of World War II.
Right.
As far as the Americans were concerned.
Right.
Anyway. And basically, I think we lost that battle.
Right.
And that's where you're captured. Right. Okay. Now let's start you back as you go. The German soldiers take you to their first staging area.
Right.
And in time, you wind up in Germany.
Right.
But how long? Well, first you went to Italy, you said, right?
Italy.
Yeah, and you flew to Italy.
Flew Italy from Africa on a Ju-52. We went to Sicily. They refueled, and they flew us to Capua, outside of Naples.
Outside of Naples, yes. Okay.
Right.
And then from there you go by train, I think.
Yeah, boxcars.
Okay, well, all right. Like boxcars on a train, and then you wind up finally in this first prison camp that you
It was Stalag 7A, which was outside Munich.
Mm-hmm.
From there, and then after a few months, they opened up the new camp because they had too many Americans. That's when we went to 3B.
Okay. And then 3B, you started your photographic work.
When we got the Red Cross parcels,
Okay.
My blessing was that I was a non-smoker. If I was a smoker, this could never have been done, because all the GIs that got parcels from home or Red Cross, they smoked every cigarette they were able to lay their hands on.
But you hoarded yours. You hoarded them and didn't smoke.
Oh, hell
Okay.
no. I use it for bartering purpose.
All right. And the bartering purpose that you started is with this one, you mentioned that you had a specific guard that you did this
For
through.
the illicit work.
Mhm.
At times you use other guards where we used to barter. The excuse was for barter for bread, which at times we were able to get, say, a kilo of civilian bread for 2 packs of cigarettes.
Mhm.
And that was heavily rationed bread.
Mhm.
And it's marvelous how the baker in town was able to deny the civilian their ration of bread and was able to sell it to the guard, possibly for a pack of cigarettes or so, and the guard will keep a pack of cigarettes for himself and give us the loaf of 1 kilo of civilian bread for 2 packs of cigarettes.
Angelo, how old was this guy? Was he a man in his 60s?
In the late 60s. He didn't care whatever happened to him.
And my experience generally with him was that at that point that the guards were all quite old people.
Well,
Later on, we got a lot of very young guards.
even not only old guards, they also had wounded soldiers that were pulling guard duty.
Mm-hmm.
And they took the risk because if they ever got caught trading, they would be sent to the Russian front.
And that was the worst fate of all.
That's one thing they didn't want to do. And it's fortunately that there was never one American that ever got any guard in trouble, because it would have been worse for us as well as for them.
Mm-hmm. Now, Angelo, when you started to take these pictures, right, you had to conceal it somewhere. You mentioned that it was at your waist level, right?
What, the camera?
The camera.
Right.
So that you could actually shoot without...
Right.
But where would you store the film and stuff?
This was all, the film, I can't store it in the ground
Mm-hmm.
because it would get mildew. I keep them all concise in one little package like, and no sooner we heard rumors, the guards put it on guard, because if we got caught and someone snitched which guard did it, they would get in trouble and we would be punished. So what happens, if they heard any kind of a rumor there's going to be a shakedown, they would come and inform us that there's going to be a shakedown this afternoon. So many of us had the opportunity to dispose of what you're not supposed to have.
So you got all this stuff from the guys, and you would trade back and forth with them, and he'd bring you the developed film.
Right.
Right. So to develop it, he needed a developer, as you said, and you assume that he gave him some cigarettes.
Yeah,
to
that,
do
well,
the
that,
development.
what they did with it, it doesn't concern me in any way, but everyone got paid, and the commodity it was using was cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
But how I befriended the guard, I forgot to mention that at one time I got I wrote to my home, and my brother was home then, and I told him I'm a crazy smoker the way I was back home, and send me as much cigarettes, cigars, tobacco, whatever you got, because I'm crazy. Just mail it to me. My brother was clever enough, he read between the lines. He's not smoking, he's using it for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got the cigars, whoever got any kind of cigarettes, tobacco, or cigars from home, very few got cigars. They made sure they smoked them all.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't give it to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But I walked by, and that's how I saw this elderly man, and trying to befriend him. And I would say, V. Gates, he says, guns good. I would get a cigar out of my pocket, throw it over the fence, and he takes the cigar. And he tells me the following day, he goes to the barrack and he sees the other guards, that he's smoking a cigar, and they're so envious. Oh, where the dickens is this man getting these cigars? And he says he was really enjoying that cigar. Well, he has to produce for the cigar, and sure enough, he produced.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever, the last time you saw them would have been in that prison camp when you had to walk on and move to the next prison camp?
I never saw him anymore.
Never saw him anymore.
Never saw him anymore.
Right. Now, when you do this march, as I recall, the prison camp I was in, we were never moved. We were fortunate; we stayed there all the time. We would get in people that had come from other camps towards the end of the war, right? But when you went on this march, right, you were actually driven rode in cars for a while.
No, everybody had to walk.
That's what I thought. Okay.
I complained. I was sick, It was one time with my bag and the equipment I had, the clothing. I didn't give a hoot if they killed me or not. I just couldn't walk. I just couldn't walk. And the good Lord watched over me. How the boys picked me up and threw me on a wagon, and they would. The man who was driving, the German, he was tickled pink that he had a wagon, and he tells the boys, whether you're sick or not sick, you better look sick. Otherwise, he has to give up, and he has to walk all the way back to the camp. So that's how we drove all the way back. And it was just fortunate how there was about 8 or 10 of us that we called Kronk that drove all the way back.
And that was after you'd been in prison camp for a little over 2 years, right?
Right, right.
Okay. Now, let's go back to prison camp where you're taking all these pictures from. You were just taking pictures of everyday activity at the
What activities transpired in the camp?
That would be the playing ball.
Whether they played ball, whether they get online to get the bucket of water. We didn't have no hot water available to us. Everything had to be done with cold water. We had to shave with cold water. And now the kitchen used to heat these huge vessels of water, and at times where the Germans were distributing sort of jam, we accumulated, each one managed to get a can, you know, like a 5-gallon can, and use that can to get hot water in there, do their clothes washing, or wash themselves, a bath and everything else, and we kept out. Well, there was no facilities for bath.
So, in all that period of time, you never had a bath?
I never had a bath.
Not even a shower?
If you went to get a shower, I was afraid to leave all my equipment out. And what would happen if I don't come back, then they'd be exposed.
So you forego the shower?
I forego to make sure that I had this the forbidden equipment under control at all times.
Now, you said, and there were also performances put on by the
Well, we had
right?
a tremendous performance in theaters. Well, the theater shots was entirely different than taking exterior pictures. Exterior pictures you could shoot at a fast pace where there's no standing still. But the nicest thing, all these theater shots that I've taken, they were all time shots. I marvel, looking back, how each and every POW cooperated. When it comes to picture taking, I don't care who it is, whether officers or whatnot, they all give you the cooperation. But surprised, they never asked me for a print, or I never informed them that I was getting the film developed. Because I don't know, if I get him developed, someone may try to do it himself. He's the one who may get caught, and then that would be the end of me getting pictures developed.
So the prints that you got back, you kept in your own possession?
The prints and the negatives. I was more concerned with the prints and negatives. What one fellow did later on, managed, you see, pictures could come from home. And what the prints come from home and go to the front office, they get these prints and stamp in back of it the proof, saying censored. So if they see a picture that's stamped censored, the German guard, whoever comes there, won't take that away from you. So someone, I don't know who it was.
He made you a stamp?
He made it out of the heel of a shoe. Made a rubber stamp that said the proof. Where they got it and whatnot, I don't know. And I got 2 pictures at home, stamped proof, and you know it's a theater picture. And that you could keep it on your possession. If the guard sees it, they don't know what it is. They see it's proof, they don't confiscate it.
Right, and what else went on in the camp? You had books, you had reading material, right?
We got
Came from the Y?
We got tremendous amount of books from the YMCA. What was nice, at the beginning, the Red Cross parcels came in wooden crates, boxes. It's, I would say, 8 inches or 8 inches width and 8 inches high, maybe about 1.5 feet long, and use that there to build the backdrop of the chapel. And at the same time, stacked these boxes one on top of the other and made them a library. And we built our own library.
Right. Now, as I recall, in those boxes was powdered milk, right?
Right.
Clim cans, right?
Yeah, clim
You
cans.
used the clim cans, didn't
Oh,
you?
definitely.
And what'd you do with the clim cans?
Well, that's where they made. Later on, it took quite some time. I don't know where it came that they made what we call the blowers. And with the blowers, a contraption of the cans, and making a place where to burn, and you get this ersatz coal that they had, put it in there, and you'd be surprised where you could heat a little food, whatever you want, or heat some hot water, and you cook yourself a warm meal. We had no such thing as a warm meal by the Germans. We got what they had. Their black bread was anywhere from 4 men on a loaf to as much as 8 men on a loaf of bread. And when that was cut, you ought to see how each and everyone seen that loaf was cut evenly, that they got their proper share. We got quite a bit of boiled potatoes, six or seven small size boiled potatoes with the bread, maybe a little tiny kind of piece of meat, whatever it may be. I don't know what it could be. And that was a supper.
That was supper.
At lunchtime, we had what they called a half bucket of soup that was boiled in the kitchen. And you get a clam can, like you scoop a can, and each one got a clam can full of hot water with rutabaga, whatever it may be. And that was lunch.
And what was breakfast?
Breakfast, maybe you get the ersatz coffee, just hot water. If we had when the Red Cross parcels came, we wanted hot water, and we used our own soluble coffee, or whatever you had, milk.
That was in the Red Cross parcel. Right. Now, at one point, I know in our camp, the Red Cross parcels stopped coming, and that with us was roughly. Let's see, I got to go back in dates. Roughly towards the end of 44, the beginning of 45. Did you continue to get Red Cross parcels?
On and off.
Yeah.
On and off. At times you had to get 2 men on a Red Cross parcel, sometimes 3. But according to the Geneva Convention, we're supposed to get 1 box per person per week. If that was there, that would have been excellent. But times didn't come, whether they were pilferage with these cars coming in with these Red Cross parcels, God only knows. But whatever got through and got to us, that was the blessing.
Now, when the Red Cross parcels stopped coming,
Then there was trouble.
yes, as I recall, we were very hungry during that period of time. And at that point, then, how'd you make out? What'd you do?
You just try to survive on what you had.
Yeah, what'd you have?
What you had. Whatever we had, if we had any few cans and their food, we were just hoping and praying that the day would come that we'd be liberated.
Did you grow vegetables at all?
No, that we couldn't do.
You couldn't do.
No.
See, in our camp we did. We grew vegetables.
No, we couldn't do that there.
In fact, I grew tomatoes.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
In fact, I think I'm the only person that ever was able to grow tomatoes that far north in Germany.
No.
And the reason for that was, I'll tell a little bit of my story. One of the guys that was with us in the compound was, like many people, a farmer. He lived in Ohio. And he made out of these cigarettes, the Polish cigarettes, which we call Polski Kopolskis, and he made a paste out of them. And that paste he put in and he used it both as fertilizer and to take care of the bugs that would come around. The German guards used to marvel on it. They didn't know what a tomato was. And they couldn't figure out how this American guy had figured out a way to grow tomatoes back in the zone.
one nice thing I like, my particular camp was an elderly group of Americans. They're not, say, the 18, 19-year-old. They could have been in their 20s. And they all had different kind of experience. That's where you had an electrician, we had a carpenter.
Right.
It's unbelievable from all walks of life. And it's marvelous how whoever got interested in keeping themselves occupied, they survived. We had a few boys that they couldn't take it. They went off their rocker. I mean, they had to be taken away in straitjackets. Because they didn't want to keep themselves occupied in any way. There's others that read books continuously, and then there was cards came from home. They played cards.
Right.
And one thing I didn't say, when on the Red Cross parcels that we had in a box, in the nighttime, we were infested with little mice. And they were all over the place, trying to get into your Red Cross box, whatever they could do. So you just cover yourself, try to see, and let the mice do whatever they want, let it go. At one night, one fellow had a brilliant idea. How are we going to catch some mice? He was able to get like a toothpick in the shape of four, and put a piece of cheese at the end of the four, like, and take our benches that we set down, upside down, and put the four underneath the bed, the bench. And if the mice will go and nibble, the bench will fall down. One night we caught about 22 little mice.
Mm-hmm.
With
this contraption.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's unbelievable.
Now, in the barracks, were you in a barracks with how many men at one time?
Anyways, from 150 to 200, 250.
And were you stacked three on?
Three on.
Three? And what
Yeah.
was your mattress like?
Straw.
Mm-hmm.
That's about all you can take, or whatever you had.
Did it get cleaned at any time that you were there over the period of time? Was it always the same straw?
Who's going to clean it?
Well, that's why I'm asking you.
No, we never had that clean.
Yeah.
And we had one urinal for the 150 to 200 men.
Mhm.
If you have to go move your bowels, then you have to go to the outhouse,
Mhm.
which was a couple hundred feet away. Whether it was cold night, winter night, and all, you just had to go there.
Mm-hmm. But how many men all in all were in that prison camp?
As much as 5,000.
Mm-hmm. And of course the population kept growing as the war went on, right?
As much as they could possibly fit in our particular camp.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now you were there during the Battle of the Bulge then, at
Yeah.
that time. You were in that camp.
Yeah,
Right.
that's where they brought many of the boys
Mhm.
from the Battle of Bulge. That's where I met my photographer friend that we landed together, and it happens to be right up there with a camera, Roland Chatham.
Mhm.
He was wounded in a bulge, and he came into the camp. I was surprised to see him after several months. He went through the Battle of Italy and everything else. Then he went back to the States. When he came back to the States, he went to Astoria, Long Island,
Mm-hmm.
and he couldn't stand it, the way they were criticizing about taking pictures, that there was movement and everything else. I like to see the boys in Astoria.
Oh, they didn't
Good.
like the pictures that he
They
brought back.
criticized, they thinking with the 155 going off or the 105 going off that they could hold their camera still.
Mm-hmm.
There was vibration there and everything else.
Mhm.
He couldn't take it. He volunteered to go back to the war front, and that's where he got caught at the Bulge.
Mm-hmm.